Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and that you're having a great New Year's and all that good stuff. And in this video, it's all about the Midwest. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure to pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching and Happy New Year. I had something terrifying happen to me when I was just a kid. It was in the summertime too. I was visiting my dad's house on the weekend in the middle of nowhere in a town in Nebraska. His house is an L-shaped, it's single story. The bedrooms are down a long hallway. The living room and kitchen are at the other end. My room is at the end of said hallway. My dad's is across it. It's 2 p.m. I'm bored of playing Banjo-Kazooie. So I curiously open my door just to go see what my dad is doing in his room. He's taking a nap. I decide to go get a snack and run down the hallway toward the kitchen, looking down at my feet as I run. I make it about 10 feet before I look up. My heart stops. My body freezes. The hair is standing on its ends. A fear unlike anything I have ever experienced rushes through my body. I see a slender face looking at me with one long black eye. Its long fingers wrapped around the corner. It's the same sight as from communion. A second later, it disappears around the corner toward the kitchen on the right. After the fear washes over, I immediately run the next 15 feet down the hall and turn. Absolutely nothing. I ran back to my room and only came out when my dad woke up. I hadn't seen communion until college, and when that scene happened, I just about shit my pants. I relived the entire memory, and this is my first and only experience of anything of this nature. Maybe somebody else knows what I saw. For reference, this happened in southern Iowa. I was about 15 minutes in the middle of nowhere on the highway at roughly 11 p.m. I saw what appeared to be a pretty big guy walking along the side of the highway. At first, I thought nothing of this. I figured it was probably somebody walking to a party that was out in the fields. But when I get closer, I see that the guy is wearing what appears to be some kind of hooded cloak. It was definitely not the weirdest thing I've seen it around here though. I slowed down just in case. Now that I'm watching this guy, I get the feeling like something isn't right. There's something weird about his movements. It's like he's not normal. It's almost like it's a person who's really drunk trying to act sober. I really slow down now. I don't want to run into some drunk dude who falls on the ground. I give him a wide berth as I go around him. I turn back to look at him, and I can't see a face. I can only see his eyes. Red eyes that seem to glint faintly like a cat's eyes in the moonlight. That lizard brain part of me kicks in, and I know that I need to get the hell out of here. I floor the gas pedal and only slow down when there's a few miles and a couple hills between me and it. I ask around the next time I'm down there. The farmer at the gas station tells me to ignore it. He says it doesn't bother them as long as they don't bother it. I ask him what it is, and he tells me again to ignore it. I keep trying. No one is talking. I have a new idea. I go to the local church and ask the pastor. He also tells me to just ignore it. Basically, if you see it, stay away. If it comes near, leave. Do not look at it. Do not try to communicate with it. I ask again what it is. He says that it's been there longer than anyone else, and it's not good to ask about things that live that long. I decide to stop asking. Clearly, I'm not going to get any answers. I've actually seen these eyes in the trees or in the fields a few times since then. Like they said, I haven't bothered it, and it hasn't bothered me. Some weird stuff happened to me on a coyote hunting trip with a friend in Wisconsin. My family owns the farm that my dad grew up on in very rural Wisconsin. Bordered on one side is government land, and on the other side, the land is owned by a tribe. Not a res, it's just owned by a tribe, but I couldn't tell you which one. So me and my buddy drive up for a weekend to do some coyote hunting. The first night we go out, I've got an AR, my buddy has my Carcano. The farm is in a valley with a road going down the center with most of the farmland off to one side. We go to the side of the road so we can look down into the whole valley and the fields and sit with our backs up against a wooded hill. 45 minutes into us just observing and listening, I get a weird feeling, like something is staring daggers into the back of my head. I don't hear or smell anything out of the ordinary though. I look over and notice that my buddy is shifting uncomfortably. We've kept completely silent thus far. He looks over at me and tells me that he wants to end it for the night and go back to the house. I don't want to tip him off that I was freaked out for some reason too, so I casually agree and we start walking down the road back to the house. Every 4 steps, he turns back around and looks behind us. I start looking too. And the third time that I look back, I see something large and on all 4s leap across the road and into the fields where it disappears into the darkness. The thing was big, like horse-sized, but it moved like a dog. This was around midnight. My buddy sees it too and starts sending 6.5mm hate toward it. We sprint back to the house, lock it down, and leave early the next day. It's not the first weird experience I've had on that land, and probably won't be the last. The farm is located way up by Wildcat Mountain State Park. Back when I lived in Chicago, I had a neighbor that was a city cop, and he told me this story, but I never found out if it was true or not. But it's really interesting. So here it is. So like I said, he was a cop working in Chicago. He was working in Humboldt Park. This call comes over the radio. Officers need assistance in an alley not too far from the boulevard. They respond to the call. They pull up into the alley, and there's utter carnage. At least 15 people are dead. Officers who call for assistance are nowhere to be found. All calls over the radio about it become more sporadic and even cryptic. More backup arrives. It becomes clear that all of the people had for some reason jumped from the roofs above the alley. The investigation was quiet. The story never even made the news. The cops who called for backup were later found back at the precinct station. They had no clue how they got there, and were very confused themselves. All the superiors encourage everyone to stay quiet about this incident. The cop friend told me that things like this happen every now and again in Chicago, and that they've been happening for a long time. But the frequency of these events has increased in recent years. I grew up on a small rural farm in Paris Township near Kenosha, Wisconsin. I remember several things occurring from 1987 when we moved to the farm until the summer of 1994 when I left for college. These incidents cover that time period. However, I can't recall exact dates. Much of this I thought of as a dream until Facebook came along and an old friend contacted me saying something along the lines of, "Hey, do you remember?" So for this first one, it was around New Year's and my parents were away from the house at a party. My brother was at a friend's and I had a friend over to work on a 10-page government report due when we got back from winter break later that week. I guess the incident occurred at around 9 p.m. and probably between December 30th and January 1st. I was likely a sophomore or junior in high school, so that would have been either 91 or 1993. There was a large front porch on the front of our house, and due to it being the winter time, we would never use that front door because the front of the house faced fields, and the wind would sweep snowdrifts onto the porch, so we always used the side door, which led to the driveway. However, if you stand on the porch near the front door, there's a picture window that looks out into our dining room, and at the end of the dining room was a large desk with a computer. Me and my friend had just finished the paper. We both stood up at the same time and turned toward the window. Staring at us from the window was a face. I recall it being whitish or gray, and it seemed as if the skin was smooth like warm candle wax. Its head was longer than a human's head, slightly more bulbous, but not in some exaggerated way. Its eyes were dark and maybe 3 or 4 times the size of a typical human's. While the description sounds like a stereotypical gray alien, it also seemed different. In fact, different enough for me to think that it was something else other than an ET until recently. Anyway, it was staring in, and in the few seconds that I saw it, I remember feeling as if it wanted to hurt me, was upset with me, or needed to get to me and was upset that it couldn't. I didn't hear anything, and I remember thinking that those were feelings that I felt deliberately from this creature. It wasn't fear, although I was terrified. About the same time that my friend and I dove to the floor, I saw the creature turn its head and run toward the driveway. From my position, he ran to the left. After about 5 minutes, my friend and I had convinced ourselves that what we'd just seen was a neighbor messing around with some kind of mask. However, when I walked my friend out to his car, we realized that there were no footprints in the snow, and there was snow everywhere from the porch to the driveway. I don't recall ever seeing the creature ever again. In my early 30s, Facebook came around. By this time, even though I vividly remembered that night, I had started to think that maybe it may have been a dream. One day, I received a message from my friend after connecting on Facebook. One of the first things that he said to me was, "Hey, do you remember that night at your house when we saw that thing?" A few years ago, I was a camp counselor at a Boy Scout camp up in Michigan, and as you can imagine, the camp is way out in the middle of nowhere. At this time, there were only a few buildings in the camp. The camp is this huge area that has 2 lakes in it, and I was basically in charge of the Wilderness and Survival Merit Badge. It's pretty sweet teaching kids how to start fires with batteries and all that kind of stuff. So the last thing that we do for a badge is we go in the woods for a night, and we survive off of nothing but a trash bag. I set up a spot about a mile into the woods from the camp. I've used that spot for about 3 years consecutively, with 0 issues. I built a giant-ass fort out there just for the hell of it that I was super proud of and would brag to the kids about every chance I got. So every year, I go to check out the site to make sure that everything is still in order. I do this usually a day before we all go out there. I decide to practice what I preach and take a few kids with me because never go alone in the woods. The kids are stoked because they get a head start on the others. So it takes a while to get there because we're going through some pretty dense woods. I think we arrived around 8 p.m. or so. The fort was absolutely trashed. I was pissed. The poles that were like 4 feet into the ground were ripped up. There were gash marks on the logs. The marks are deep and definitely don't look like a bear. I know this kind of stuff. We walk around the site and notice these gashes are everywhere, on trees, even on rocks. We're all getting a little freaked out now. It starts to get dark, and me and the kids finish cleaning that site for tomorrow. The kids ask me, what made the mess? I don't want to freak the kids out by saying, no clue, I'm just as spooked as you are. So I tell them that it was a rabid bear, or a mountain lion, or something like that. They believed me. So we were about to walk back a little bit later, and I notice something in the leaves. There's a ripped up raccoon. The head is missing, and there's scratches everywhere. It's fresh as delivery pizza, so whatever put it there saw us cleaning up the site. The kids see it, and of course get scared. I tell them that we have to make a lot of noise when we walk back, so whatever this is knows where we are and hopefully will stay away. Boyscouts of America doesn't allow any guns, but I do have an M9 bayonet that I bought off Army Surplus. We make it halfway when we hear a howl. It's deep as hell. It's not a wolf, not a coyote. I get chills all the way down my spine. I tell the kids to start walking faster. I hear the howl again. We all heard it this time. It's much closer. I start power walking with the kids. We reach the main pavilion right as it gets dark. I send the kids back to their respected campsites. I stay in the kitchen pavilion all night. Every now and then, I swear I can hear scratching at the door. I don't sleep a wink. I tell my boss the next day that a bear just totaled my campsite. I say it's too dangerous to go back that night. He believes me, and I just set up a, quote, survival camp in an unused campsite that's right nearby the pavilion. The kids are actually happy that they don't have to go back out there to get the badge. But there are some of the kids who were a little less enthusiastic and wanted to go back out there. But for the rest of the week, not much happens. I passed the kids that went with me, even though they didn't do some of the requirements. This isn't the first thing or the last thing that happened to me during my many years in the camp, but it was the one time that I felt the most in danger. But I have another story though. So I was still camp counselor. I don't do wilderness survival by this point. I do what's called the Indian badge or native badge, depending on where you are in the US. It was the 2010 anniversary, and I decided that it was a really cool badge to do. I was super into Indian legends in Michigan. The kids I teach just do the badge because it's a limited edition, which, whatever I guess, but they're still learning about it. One kid is really into this stuff. I talk to him a lot about it. He is really cool. We all take to calling him Little Bear, but he wasn't little. He was, not gonna lie, really fat. But he was 13, and he wasn't like a lot of the other 13-year-olds. He was calmer and would listen, and didn't have the attitude. But he's in wilderness survival. One of my friends does the night hike now, and I convince him to bring me along. I have to bring along the astronomy kids to go with us. This is due to prior incidents that I won't get into right now, but it was an absolute shit show. Every 10 minutes we have to stop and look at the stars and point out constellations. After a while this becomes very monotonous and annoying. The kids who are not doing the astronomy badge seem to be getting a little restless, so I take them and I continue on toward that other campsite. The spot was only about a half a mile away anyways by this point, and this campsite is on the opposite side of the property from the one years ago, for the reasons above. So the forest gets super quiet, no bugs or coyotes yipping like normal. That wilderness survival doomsday prepper instinct starts tingling. Something is wrong. I whip out my knife from my new leather sheath. The leather making was under the same pavilion as the Indian badge, so I got it for free. I take out my knife and my flashlight, and I'm feeling like Solid Snake right now. And then something hits my foot. It's a rock. I walk for a few more minutes. A kid complains that another kid is throwing rocks at him. The other kid denies it, and a fight breaks out. We break them up and try to calm everybody down. And then another rock hits me in the back. I shine my light. There's no one there. We get to the camp area that we were headed to. It's the version 2 of the aforementioned fort from the first one. I help the kids build their shelters, and then we sit by the fire. There's still rocks now and then. They hit us or around us. I was starting to think that it was the astronomy kids that we left in the forest screwing with us. At about 2 a.m., the rocks are still coming in now and again, but at this point, it can't be those kids. We're all kind of quiet, kind of spooked. Little Bear is convinced that some spirit or mystical animal or something from a tribe nearby is screwing with us or is angry with us. He freaks out the other kids. And with the other kids freaked out, that makes my job a little harder. I have to end up letting all 15 kids into the big fort at night, and they didn't sleep in their shelters. Me and my friend attend the fire until dawn. Around 6 a.m., the rocks being thrown finally stop. And no matter how fast we shine the light around, no matter how fast we took off in the direction of whatever was throwing these rocks, we never saw anything throw them. At around 7 a.m., we pack up. There's rocks everywhere. And we think, how are there this many rocks in this area of the forest? We were over a mile from the lake, and some of these stones were clearly from there. We have no clue who the hell's been throwing them, or what's been throwing them. Little Bear thinks it's super cool and grabs a bunch of rocks as souvenirs. We head back to the pavilion for breakfast. I ask the astronomy counselor if he was screwing with us last night, and I'm kind of angry about it. He doesn't even know where my camp was, and was actually super pissed at me for leaving him and taking half the group with me. I get bitched out by the boss. All the other kids, including Little Bear, that were out in the woods with us last night, freak out the whole camp at breakfast. Legends begin of how me and my friend fought off a tribe of Bigfoot with fire, defending the fort. We become heroes for no reason, but the rest of the counselors hate us both. It seems that Bigfoot screwed up my camp social life. So those encounters were pretty crazy, weren't they? If one in particular stuck out to you, make sure to let me know which one it was down in the comments. And, as always, if you had an encounter of your own, I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. And also down in the description is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate or support the channel that way. And with that, I think that I will wish you a happy new year. I hope you had a safe new year and that nothing crazy happened. But if it did and it's related to the channel, then feel free to email me because that would be a great story. But I really do hope you had a good new year. I hope you had a good Christmas. I hope the holidays have been treating you well. And let's hope that there's many, many more encounters and crazy stuff to happen in the new year. And with that, I thank you for pulling up a stump. I thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.